But what doesn't suck is being in the same room with people and I don't forget, but it's so easy to go with the median value on a Zoom that people bring. But if you're in person with someone, you're like, oh, this person's different. Oh, they get it. The customer's more present, your teammates more present. And so if you're good at what you do in the dynamics of the room, it actually goes a lot further. You get more stuff done, you build relationships. The
Yeah.
bittersweet of it is I hate traveling, but fuck, it's effective. Being in the room with your customer.
Every day I find something new to do with Claude, Cowork, or just call it Claude. I don't even think you have to call it Cowork anymore. That I'm like, oh, it does this. That's cool. Let's start doing this way.
We're seeing this fundamental shift in, oh, you need this ride along Copilot tool, whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
we're not going to look back in 12 months and be like, how did we live without this? Yeah. And so the trip, like I was saying, so the trip there was not bad. And then the trip back was kind of sucked because of all the things. But so I don't enjoy travel much like you. So partially because I'm in Texas. I was talking to my wife about this. So going to Seattle is 4 hours on the plane, in the air, basically, right? And that doesn't account for the 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after. It doesn't account for the 2 hours of travel time and waiting at the airport, the hour to get back. So it just sucks. But what doesn't suck is being in the same room with people and I don't forget, but it's so easy to go with the median value on a Zoom that people bring. But if you're in person with someone, you're like, oh, this person's different. Oh, they get it. The customer's more present, your teammates more present. And so if you're good at what you do in the dynamics of the room, it actually goes a lot further. You get more stuff done, you build relationships. Then I could have had 10 Zoom calls with the same team and not be anywhere as connected or earned as much trust. Does that make sense? Like what I'm trying to say? I don't know. You don't have to agree with me, but
I know,
that's
I hear what you're saying.
the
Yeah.
bittersweet of it is I hate traveling, but fuck, it's effective. Being in the room with your customer.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. It's, I guess, like dating. Like, I don't know how well you could date just doing Zoom calls.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, totally. I was like, I don't think either of us were in the swipe left right generation, so I have no idea how online shit works.
Yeah. But no, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I know you shared like the anecdote about some conversation. I don't want to drill into it, but like a customer or somebody's customer made a comment about they're spending 1 million a month on AI.
Yeah, so just where you're in the mecca of Amazon. We went through the spheres and everything. You get to work with your teammates. There's a lot of cross sharing, and then I saw people that were there that I've worked with, and they were supporting their customers, and so it's a lot of cross pollination, which is again a benefit. But yeah, net is one of the comments in the conversation from a senior leader of one of the customers apparently was, "Hey, you know, you forget if they said what they spent, but like, we spent $1 million on this. I'd be happy with 1 million in like ROI, meaning if I got $1 million of value." And I was just like, not 10 million, like, and so it was like, no, they didn't even want 10x returns. They just wanted to know they weren't lighting their money on fire. And this is someone who's very, I'm sure, very competent, and runs an organization. And it's just crazy. That's the state we're in. It's like you have to play the game, but there's a high cost to the early innings of this game. And you don't know where it's going to land.
Yeah. Feel that sort of has justifies those comments and those spend because I think everybody has just watched the evolution of technology through time and most recent history, dating back to the internet, which was only like 30 years ago is where it really took off, let's say e-commerce. And it's like if you don't place the bets, then do you become the cliche Barnes and Nobles, right? Like if you like, yeah, we're burning $1 million a month and we're not seeing the ROI, we'd be happy just recouping our spend versus like, oh, we're not going to do anything and then end up you're displaced because you didn't take that monthly $1 million bet. So yeah, it's probably super tough. Like just in general in business, you got to take those bets and be misunderstood for long periods of time.
Yeah, I think we talked about it before. so many companies is I don't want that business. I don't want that low margin book business. I'm not going to compete because then I would invest and make less money. And then we know how that turned out. And there was the guy's name, I think is Nate. This was on Prof G Markets. Let's see. Whoa. Did you hear that? Or was that in my ears?
I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Noah Smith, so he was talking about this and because they were trying to ascertain the whole ROI of AI. And the paradigm was if in order to get and transform our economy, there's got to be a period of like sunk cost learning in order to get to quote unquote the mecca, right? Then that's just going to be what it is. But we're eventually going to, achieve those results. And so that's not so much that we're not being productive. It's just that the productivity and the ROI doesn't show up in the early years in terms of revenue, financial metrics. It's all the organization internalizing it and then bearing the brunt of that, which kind of makes sense if you think of like, and maybe this is an extreme example of Uber, right? They had to create the market, they had to finance the market, subsidize the market. And once they killed all their competitors with their financial capital strengths, then they could actually make money. And now they're dominating. I think they'll do really well, even in autonomous, because they built that platform. And so it's one of those, can you afford to not be in the first cohort? And I think a lot of tech leaders feel like they can't. And he had a great analogy. I know we talk a lot about like the electricity, and maybe this isn't some of the stuff we read, but when the boom went on, they replaced all of the boilers, and these manufacturing buildings had multiple floors, but it's all on a conveyor belt. And so the boiler just put out continuous energy and speed, but all the conveyor belts ran at the same speed. So everything was optimized for the average, right? Like it was just, you have one speed, so there's no specialization. So they replaced it with whatever the electrical dynamo machine was at the time, which was less efficient per watt. And it just did the exact same stuff, but they only changed the inputs. And so he called it electrical maxing or electricity maxing is the analogy. And it wasn't for 20 years later where they redesigned all the systems and you could create devices that could run at variable speeds and it was easier. And then you would get the productivity savings from that after you redesigned it. So I know it's a kind of an overused example, but I thought that nuance that he went into made a lot of sense to me. I was like, oh, okay, that kind of articulates. And so we're in this learning phase. There's going to have to be a reorganization of human capital in our processes and our systems around it. I have no doubt it's going to change and be more productive. It's just, what is that going to look like and how long is it going to take?
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Morse theory every 2 years, so maybe 4 years.
Yeah. I don't envy the position of our CFOs these days, having to defend these investments.
Yeah. Even this year though, too, like to your point, like reorganizing human capital, but I feel like we've made such maybe just me, just like, I feel with like Claude Cowork has just made such leaps and bounds just this year that like, I don't know, like stuff I'm seeing and then stuff I'm doing. And again, that mine is just very like, I don't want to call it tunnel or segmented, but every day I find something new to do with Claude Cowork, or just call it Claude. I don't even think you have to call it Cowork anymore. That I'm like, oh, it does this. That's cool. Let's start doing this way.
100% agreed. And one thing I was doing right before we started chatting was loading our tool, SharePoint and Word documents. I just noticed Amazon Quick now does the plugins. So, how Cowork or Claude has had the plugins for PowerPoint and Excel. And now it just pops up and says, oh, do you want to sign into your Quick account to do this? I was like, yes, I do. And so it's interesting. I bring that up less about the product or products, but the change, right? Like now, like that's becoming more of the norm. Whether it's Codex or Quick or Cowork or whatever, it's like now we're seeing this fundamental shift in, oh, you need this ride along Copilot tool, whatever it is. And so we're not going to look back in 12 months and be like, how did we live without this?
But it is, we've been using the Claude tag. I know you brought it up a couple of weeks ago and asked, but I haven't really talked to any engineers like in a like discussion interview format of like asking them their thoughts, but seeing it interact. So like, for example, like I had the data question, like I couldn't find some data that wasn't in like our Postgres, like ClickHouse. And so I just went into like the data channel where Claude tagged lives as well. And I was like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Claude is telling me this table is sitting over in this database that it doesn't have access to. Anybody in data, can you help me like figure this out? What can we do so I can get access and add it to the Postgres or the ClickHouse MCP, da, da, da. And then Claude responded. And it's like, oh, I'll spin up the PR right now. Let me get this going. Da, da, da. And then it tagged the right data team members to actually come in and stamp the PR and pull things forward. I was just like that. And it's done that a few times, like where I've posted stuff like, oh, we have this new team that needs to integrate. Here's the docs. And it's like, okay, just read through the docs. This looks like a Uni V3. We've got this set up here. I'll push the PR and we'll wait for it to get stamped. I'm like, and I don't know how much like that would have taken an engineer or what. Like I'm imagining for them now they're just coming in and like PR's there and the framework and the scaffolding has just been pulled forward by Claude, like based on my request.
I just think how pissed off they must be if you could have Claude agent or bot creating more work. But at the same time, they didn't have to join a meeting. They didn't have to process the requirements. It's just something that's gone into the queue. They didn't have to figure out. They're like, oh, you want this? Okay, I'll slate this in. So, which is super cool. And one of the things I was talking to one of my customers about, the CIO specifically, I was just giving him my anecdote. We've talked about the EBC prep, all the internal connectors that make our quick interface useful is like, I take the transcript from the team and I process it, but then it goes out and it looks at our phone tool and our high spot and what's the latest. And then it pulls all the information back. That's all the context of our company. And I kind of feel like that's what it's doing. Your analogy was just that. Yeah, you could draft a PR, but what's cool is that it's integrated in all to the backend systems and then it can talk to your peers and it pulls all the relevant context and how y'all work. And then it's shortcut in a meaningful way that is actionable at your specific company, which is mind blowing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, and it also like chimes in, and I've actually used it a few times in not a debate manner, but like somebody will have said something like on a commercial structure I'd use, it'd be like, we shouldn't do this, or I disagree here, or have we thought about this? And then I'll ask Claude, hey, Claude, what do you think? And it chimes in, and sometimes in my favor, sometimes not. But like, it's interesting too, because it's like a way to have a backbone and disagree and not commit because I'm pulling in like this third party and asking like, based on all the data you see internally and you're pulling, and it'll pull stuff like based on revenue or blah, 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 like it pulls metrics. And so it's fascinating. I could only imagine what it's like working at Anthropic, because they're probably been experiencing this for 6 months, right? Where it's all getting used to GA.
Yeah, it's funny. Be careful what you wish for, or you use at your own risk. That's almost like a grenade. Hey, tell me what you channeled, like what is it? They do Ask Rock on Twitter. It's just ruthlessly, I don't know, opinionated. Maybe I wouldn't say always right.
Yeah, no, but it is very fascinating.
We've been chatting offline. I've been trying to figure out. Did we talk about this last week? The whole OpenRouter, right? They're estimated. I think we did. The 50 million kind of ARR and the potential multi-billion-dollar. I think they got valued at 1.3 billion, and that there's a rumors of like 10 billion. And then you texted me, I think Stripe was like one of the suitors who's also pursuing PayPal, and then Ramp launched their router, and then LLM router, and then Cursor launched their. And so, what do you make of all this? I've just been struggling with like why, in terms of like why are because Stripe, PayPal, and Ramp are all financial companies, right?
Yeah,
so I'm like,
Ramp, I can see first, like I'll take a step back. And I think the comment I made to you, and I had made, somebody had posted the Ramp one, because that's how I saw it internally. And somebody commented, why is our payable or something company doing a router? And I was like, I don't know. Why did a bookstore create the cloud? Or why did the online bookstore create the cloud? Like,
touche.
So that's my analogy there. It's like, why not? What was it? Was like, just like the invent and simplify or invent and wander. So I would say, yeah, like, why not Ramp? Why not Stripe? Ramp is in the accounts receivable, accounts payable type space. Hey, we can inject our router service here to help you save money, finance team. I think that's a smart play. Stripe may be similar. Plus, they have a huge, customer base similar to any other cloud provider. Not that they're a cloud provider, but any other like large hyperscaler. So it's like they have this reach that probably goes above and beyond. It's a combination of GCP, AWS, and Azure, right? Because Stripe is pretty much the only game in town for what they do. There's like some nascent smaller ones, but I think
Interesting.
that's my take. And it's why not? But then the question is, does that crush OpenRouter's valuation or defensibility? It's like, how easy is it to spin up a model router? I think I shared with you, like we talked with MuleSoft and they were trying to pitch us on theirs.
Yeah,
Not to
you
knock,
did.
not to knock
Yeah.
MuleSoft. So come in because we're trying to set up an SFDC MCP, and they were like, hey, we have these other tooling just as a broader conversation, like what models are you using? We can set up this router to help you guys eliminate like how many types of cats are there versus help me solve this.
Yeah. No, it's a good, interesting question. So I asked Fable 5, because this is a hard problem for me to understand. It was like, why Stripe? Why is Stripe buying PayPal? Why is Stripe looking at OpenRouter? Why is Ramp launching their own router? Well, I didn't get to Cursor, but it was interesting for me. So Stripe apparently is the AI developer backend, and then PayPal is kind of the B2C side. Like, okay, that makes sense. And then the OpenRouter angle was, at least as Claude was putting it, essentially being, see, OpenRouter fills the which model does an agent call, metered, how layer, completing the chain from model selection to commercial settlement. Token consumption is a usage-based commerce, and Stripe wants to be the metering plus monetization layer for it. They also just bought Metronome, the usage-based billing company, so the pattern is unmistakable. So very confident based on daily something resource. So I guess that's interesting. If agents are going to, one angle is to go forward a couple of years, if agents are going to be doing all the shopping for us, it makes sense that Stripe's going to want to be the payment processing layer, and then also being able to help route these type of, just having a value add of like, how do you do your token economics with agents, and as well as the monetization layer is interesting. So I thought that was cool. And then Ramp, I guess they opened it up just as they did it for themselves. So like to your point on the AWS side, they just like, we use it ourselves. We open sourced it. Here you go. I just don't know enough if it's like a plop in place, like almost like an API gateway or a SEG or something like a virtual appliance or maybe a hosted SaaS appliance. Because OpenRouter, I think, handles all the billing. And I think to just say that they're an OpenRouter is a disservice to them, just like a routing of prompts. Because I think onboarding all of these different providers is not an easy or simple task. And then managing the security of that, authentication, and this simplification of all that via control plane is probably a lot of value. Because otherwise you could just, it's like, let me bring my 5 API keys because I'm not using more than 5 models. So I think there's a little more there for OpenRouter. And I just take this analogy a little bit back to Bedrock. Bedrock is a Switzerland of models, but from my understanding, it's not easy to onboard a new model provider. And that's a little different because AWS manages the environment, but still, like, there's capacity, there's a control plane, there's a data plane, there's isolation. So I think OpenRouter is a little bit more than here's an open source tool, install it. So that's my
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're probably nailing the hammer or the nail on the head. And the ramp one, yeah, that is a good question. Yeah. Is it just plug your APIs into here and we just built this interface?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I'm still we've been going back and forth on the Chinese model noise. Everyone keeps saying startups and all of these people are using Chinese models. I don't think there's any data outside of the OpenRouter leaderboard, which is not a representation of the full, users of these models at scale. And the comments I was hearing this week were, there are no Fortune 500 companies that want to use a Chinese model. There are no CISOs, there are no CIOs. It is not fucking worth it.
Yeah.
Full stop. I don't want to get asked by anybody. I don't want to use it because I don't want to have my customers ask me if I'm using it and how I'm protecting it if I am. It's just not even worth it. just pay the extra 50% more per token, which I thought was fascinating because I was like thinking, all right, what are the labs you're tracking? Because there's so many now. Which ones, so we can essentially curate it and help you stay on know if there's any partnership announcements or features. And they're like, it's a short list. I was like, okay. So I get the prosumers, but I don't know that the enterprises and the true builders are doing this unless they're going through, maybe they're going through Fireworks or Base 10 for the managed inference and they're hosting some of the open weights. But I also just heard a comment today that some of this may be like, I aced the test, but I can't do the job at work. So the Chinese models are crushing these kind of benchmarks that are saturated, but then very brittle in actual production.
I could see that. The one, I guess, example or one was the Hugging Face and OpenAI, where they said the US models could help because of the guardrails. And so they sent the Chinese agents in and we're like, hey, we don't abide by your rules, which is comical because it's like almost like a movie script or visualizing like a comic book of, oh, we're being attacked. We can't defend ourselves. Call on the enemy. The enemy does.
It is. It is. It's like, what is it? The M16s don't work. Let's get the AK-47s. Make an order real quick. It's like you're buying from your enemy, so you have shit that works offensively. It is a trip, dude. So
Yeah, but that it's like nerd stuff that like only we get and we're entertained by. Others just probably read it. Oh, interesting.
did you see that article? It's just so I brought this up because the freaking chief investment officer of JP Morgan had their CISO on Eye on the Market this week for their podcast. I just happened to listen to it before my EBC. And so I was like, man, this is like serendipitous in terms of content because I think it was like the cybersecurity thing, and then I think the AI like CapEx or like models. Those, it was basically like, how defensible are the moats for the frontier labs, and then how much risk is in security for enterprises because of how proficient these models are becoming in cybersecurity. And let's see, I'm gonna if I pull up this graph, it's gonna be pretty terrible. But did you get the last ones spent tokens? Did you see this? Essentially, it's an evaluation of how many 32 steps to fully compromise a network. And up until recently, no model autonomously has been able to do this on their own. And so this is what happened with the Hugging Face. They do it in simulations, but the Hugging Face example with OpenAI was like a real life example. But it was interesting because they weren't hacking it to hack and steal. It was almost purely academic. But you can see the different levels from initial reconnaissance to browser credential threat theft that happened around 5.1, a wiki exploit, credential replay, to reverse engineering crypto analysis with 5.5, up to infrastructure compromise and full network takeover, which Mythos Preview and OpenAI ChatGPT or GPT 5.5 Cyber. Best attempts. So I think they got 3 out of 10 tries. They were able to do all 32 steps. So it's pretty insane how fast this threat surface is increasing on this stuff. So pretty much anybody can be a hacker if you've got these open weight models, which is pretty terrifying. So also maybe another reason to own CrowdStrike as a stock, but we're not stock pickers.
I think Mythos, just to me, whenever I see it, does sound like very gloom and doom. That just sounds like the name that you'll hear on in the future of, yeah, the end of society was because of Mythos. just sounds dark.
Yeah, very like Greek mythology. Like Mythos came down, the god of Mythos, and wiped out the fire from the world, and humans died.
Yeah. The Skynet. I thought Skynet was a cool name. Mythos, like.
So talking about modes a little bit, we've got the cybersecurity and we've got all the Chinese models. The Adam GTM.com, he posted on LinkedIn. I thought it was super interesting. It was about the consolidation in GTM. I know I just sent this, and this is super tiny graphics, but he was just talking about the bootstrap GTM, and it's a bloodbath for account-based marketing and account signals. And it's that whole this explosion of apps, and then eventually there's a consolidation. And so he sold his company, I think, fairly recently, but he's seen this trend around all of these small little. I'm sure these guys are a lot of them were profitable, so they made money, but it was these are raised. They raised 6.9 million or 16.9 million, but it's interesting. I guess my question here is: do you think there's more of this to come or less? And do you think this is the end of guy person SaaS? Is it just this industry, or is this the new trend, right? The consolidation of this, and people are going to just be like, it's not worth it because we'll get bundled out somehow. I just thought this was like an interesting topic for us to track.
Hard to say, because my gut says this is like reaching the end, like saturation. So many, I often think of myself or like you or anybody else at like AWS, like your team is not going out there and procuring or signing up for any of those services to implement at AWS. And it would be probably really hard for those teams to sell into AWS and stand anything up. And then like my size, like even where we're at, it's like maybe we use one or two. So it's almost like a lot of those tools are just like the solopreneur or like very like selling to their cohort. So like my analogy would be like you're in YC and your YC batch, spring or fall, whatever we're in, all your YC counterparts are using your service just because, hey, like we're all in this network. And then other similar smaller startups or solopreneurs are using that. But I think it takes a little bit to get to the bigger size, but I think they're not all going to survive.
Yeah, I don't know what about the LinkedIn algorithm feed was doing this or if it was just timing, but did you see those posts on, hey, these are the 18 tools in my GTM stack infographics going around? And my
Yeah.
first thought was like 18 fucking tools in your stack? I can't think of
Oh,
18 things I do in a day, let
I
alone
know.
like, and it's just like that. To me, that was just a sign. There's no way. There's just no, like that is like Salesforce looks at that and it's like, I'm going to take out 70s with this one right here. And like, full stop, just go to bed. Just like, CIO,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, and I don't want to sound like a boomer or like old or anything, but to me too, it's almost like people who are just entering the GTM space or like sales. And I don't care if you're selling cars or you're selling cloud. You're just like, oh, I need all these like fancy because like they tell me that's going to help me generate business. I'm told this is going to clean my data. I'm told me that this is going to help me with my email copy. This is going to help me with my outbound tracking. This is going to help me with my inbound. This is going to help me automate this. That's like something I feel like that is sold to like the rookies, right? Per se, like somebody who's just looking to how they're going to close like their first big deals. Like you need all these. It's like like how people get coaches. Like no knock to coaches. If you're a life coach, a business coach, or whatever, but for a while those were big. I don't see them. Maybe it's because but I know that that world exists where people are like, oh, I have a business coach. Like, why do you need a business coach? Or, and I don't, and maybe you have one. I don't want to knock it,
I'm not
but
trying to say I'm better for it, but because I
but
don't.
people actually pay like business coaches,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's what all these tools are. Cause you're like, well, if I pay for it, then that's going to help my business.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I don't disagree either. It's just I just get overwhelmed by just the 15 or 18 tools just in your GTM department. And someone's gonna be like, Quinn, you're so dumb. Every customer at AWS uses 15 services, and that's just to host their one application. I get that. It's like, okay, we're talking about numbers here, and yeah, I'm sure at Amazon we have Salesforce, but then there's like another backend data store tool and a data warehouse tool, and then a visualization. But I just there's just so many of these companies that right now feel like features, not products to me.
Yes.
And in an age where you can copy features really quickly, like it kind of goes back to now an analogy here was just the whole is China AI dumping. And so they have cheaper power. They're subsidizing the token cost. They're stealing the IP slash training, let's say, because they're like distilling. And so just drive the profit margin down so that you have Anthropic and OpenAI just can't make enough money to continue training the frontier. And then there's a consolidation or an undermining. And it's on the other side of this, like that's what's going to happen to the smaller players, like Google, Amazon, like just whoever, the war chest, people with money that want to can go after these markets if there's margin there. But in this GTM space, I'm thinking more HubSpot and Salesforce. I think right now Clay's dominating, they're expanding. Salesforce is going headless. They've got a full stack. They've got MuleSoft, they've got Slack. HubSpot's moving and shaking. So it's hard to see how you can carve out a niche, see adoption, and then keep it sustainable for a really long time. And I just think you're going to get stuck in like the 100 million to 500 million space forever.
Yeah. And even if you can make it to 100 million, like, because that's at $20 a month or like what most of these cost, that's a pretty large jump.
Yeah.
It's a lot of customers.
Look at all these different categories Adam's got on here. This is great. Agent, native, GTM, Granola, Attio, Nooks, Mind, Rocks, developer tools, Vercel, 11 Labs, LangChain, Supabase, Base 10, which is interesting to me. But that's of 216. Traditional SaaS for GTM, 306. So maybe I'm going to eat my words here. Oh, there's such a long tail and there always has been, Quinn. But I just don't know. Yeah, just the 80% of the market's going to be taken by 20% of the people, it feels like. Outside of cybersecurity, it feels like there's a lot of consolidation. So I don't know. It's just, I don't envy the sellers.
Yeah. And some of this stuff too, like I was just glancing at it, I think the individuals like who post that, and it's no knock to them, it's more just like content. I feel look how much I know, or like I'm an angel investor in these companies. And so like, I'm going to highlight them and then like segment them. And yes, there's other competitors, but what is it? Mind Journey or Mid Journey was on there.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull it back up. I can't find it.
And touch that. No knock to, it was great back in the day, logging into the Discord server and prompting, but I haven't touched it in years. And I don't think I'm going to go. And I don't think anybody here at my company is going to be like, I'm doing a subscription for this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like that. I need that in my stack. Like I just, that's, I don't know, just some of it feels like a reach. So more for him for content, which is good. Okay. Look how knowledgeable I am about all these AI GTM tooling.
Yeah. Adam, he didn't post the GTM stack. He does a lot more of the research and consolidation. So he's not offering like, these are the ones those are different people. So I actually think the stuff, his research is super helpful because he's pulling all the data on this for us to be able to see it. There's just so much. There's so much. So it's hard to maybe wrap my baby sales brain around it. So that's why I don't understand.
The other one too, like had the Vercel in there. I mean, that's like, is that a GTM tool? Yes, if I'm a solopreneur and I need to stand something up, and I guess like, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, I don't know. Even the ones I look at for just some of the friends companies, you just don't need maybe an Apollo, maybe a HubSpot or an Attio and a Clay. That gets you 80% of what you need or want. Pivoting a little bit, but staying on the GTM talk, I've been having a lot of conversations around the CRM aspect of companies. And what's interesting is even in enterprises, no one feels like they're kind of nailing it. Even if you have Gong, like that ultimate kind of like nirvana of CRM excellence, people still struggle with. So I'm trying to talk to some consulting people, and I'm still trying to find somebody to Slalom, because I know Slalom knows AWS and Salesforce. How do you pull in all these different signals and the call transcripts and create the data layer? It's funny because now you're talking about building shit on top of Salesforce, but it's how do you feed in the product-led growth signals, the customer churn signals? How do you feed in the transcripts into the call analysis and win-loss analysis from real data, like out of Gong? But then you have your transactions and your quote to cash and your pipeline management in Salesforce so that your people can extract out. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's like garbage in, garbage out. And it's funny, the incentives from the top usually incentivize shit data in. It would be my point of view.
Yeah, we use Fellow for our like recording transcripts. So like similar to like, I know Gong has gone in that direction now where they're using it for meeting recordings. But yeah, it has a feature and I can set the feature flag to automatically send to Salesforce on it. Ties it to the email address in the meeting. So if I have a meeting and it's got, Quinn at ABC Co, as soon as that meeting wraps, it sends that meeting recording to Salesforce. But then if there's no lead or contact in Salesforce and it just sits there, and then I have to still go through the manual, application of like having it ingest. And then I always question, what good is it at the contact layer if my notes are going to the contact, but people are only searching account level. So they're the account level, unless it's instructing it to go through all notes attached to all contacts and leads, then does it get the context? Because now it's like, so yeah, to your point, it's like, then you have to manage like how it's building whatever BI results you want, the output, because yeah, all my Gong meetings could attach to my contact, but if the reporting is only at the account level and it's not drilling down through every lead or every contact and looking at those notes, then the Gong does no good. So it's not that it's garbage in or garbage out, it's just that it's lost in the ether.
Yeah, there's a great comment on that. Like I read something from a Substack. I wanted to pivot, I think, but real quick, I talked to a buddy, kind of similar things. He sells tree services, and he sold his company, and now he's a sales leader there. But he's getting like nasty grams internally from sales ops saying, why haven't you talked to this customer in 6, 9, 12 months? But because the CRM doesn't realize it's a subsidiary of like this other company that he talks to on a weekly or monthly basis, it's just wasted signal. And he's got to manage up and be like, no, because the data is wrong. And another, for me, what we hear a lot is when a measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure. And so I just think like pipeline, if you set a pipeline target for create and launch, and then all of a sudden you say, hey, y'all are behind, what happens? All of a sudden you have new pipeline and launch. If it's not related like to actual transactions where deals have to be signed, where if you can create it, then I don't know, man. There's just a lot of that. What I thought was interesting, there was, gosh, what was this? The scarce resources consensus on Substack from Analytics Engineering Roundup. So what was it? They were talking about kind of the Gong and what the they're actually putting in a lot of governance around like taking the transcribing notes and just like putting them into a data lake, and then but also doing like a layer of, I don't know, data cleansing on top of that, because MCP servers are inherently like really like token heavy and inefficient, and so they do a lot of distilling before it, and then they're applying IAM roles on top of that. So it's interesting to really use these tools effectively, the LLM layer on top of it. To your point, that is what I was trying to call out here, is if you're not getting into the minutia of how your accounts and everything's linked, and then having that tied back to like relevant data and having a catalog and the governance of the data and the cleansing of the data, it's just going to be really inefficient and difficult to get the value that's promised from the system or the sale. And so people are doing it, but it seems like few and far between.
Brings up something I saw, and I didn't chime in on it internally, but goes back to the Gong, or for us Fellow. I think our retention our retention was 90 days. I think it's gone to 1 year, but a lot of that is driven by like legal, You just brought up a good point. So the only thing that's really sent to Salesforce is like the next steps. It doesn't dump the whole transcript into Salesforce. Like that still lives in, Fellow. So in 18 months from now, if somebody's trying to see what account conversations we had, and I've just been relying on Fellow to send it to Salesforce, that's done. Like it just showed my next steps, not like what the
Yeah.
transcript or any of like the summary. So I didn't even think about that. And then because somebody brought it up internally, but then that's where you mentioned like the data lake. So maybe we need to get into the habit. I'm just thinking out loud now. It's like, we just need to take all transcripts and just dump them into some repo.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. So I found the quote here. We had a lot of people. So they're talking about building agents on top of a data lake. And so they were having a lot of people that connected directly to Gong to understand customer feedback, and they burn through tokens incredibly quickly because a single Gong call could be between 10 and 50,000 tokens. And so that's just like that. Those MCP calls are really inefficient. So what they did is they took and they dumped all of the Gong transcript and ingested it into the data lake. So you got the raw layer, and then they run a summarization on top of that. And then they were saying there's just a lot of noise and not much signal out of these Gong calls. So they can shrink it about 20x. But to your point, you can still have the raw there and the signal to kind of tier it up. And so they're just saying it's way more efficient to pull from a data lake, but this is like those extra 2 steps that go beyond just a simple MCP server. Adds a little friction, but then that's what's going to set you apart operationally.
Yeah, we should do a GTM stack.
27 apps.
We should do, yes, 27, but ours should be the real GTM, and it'd be like just like Redshift. Like, here's the thing,
Yes.
you guys are playing with toys. We're playing with like the real deal. Like, what is this? These $20 homemade SaaS. We deal with real data lakes and warehouses.
Yeah. It's not a terrible idea. There's so much is serverless now. You can just store everything in S3 and just kind of the ad hoc queries. But there's, I don't know. It just goes back. There's no easy buttons. I know there's people that are super high agency. There's really smart people doing crazy stuff that's really impressive and these automation loops. But I don't know, man. It's just every time you make a leap forward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, there's still friction and taxes that go on to get to the next level. So
Sometimes I feel like it just gives us more stuff to work on and think about. That's, yeah, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's great now we have all this, but now we got to go figure out how to make it.
Exactly, because the bar keeps raising, right? Diffusion of knowledge. Everyone now, it could be a polymath because they have Claude Code on their phone or T or Claude. So it's you just constantly have to be like, how do you differentiate? How do you get the signal from the noise faster? How do you execute more efficiently and faster? That'll never change, good or bad.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that'll close us out for today. So if you liked what you heard, go ahead and follow us on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify or Apple, and subscribe. Helps us a lot. Throw a thumbs up or a comment and anything you want us to talk about. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.